Hello, my name is Jiso and I'm wearing my rakusu today, which, so it's all backwards for you, isn't it? Has my Dharma name, Jiso, which means natural and unadorned. And the verse of the Kesa, vast is the robe of liberation, the formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata teaching, saving all sentient beings, and that's signed by the preceptor Shoji Kaizen, 28th of October 2021. And that's important today because we are looking at Kesa kudoku in Shōbōgenzō, chapter 12, the merit of the Kasāya. Kesa is the word that most people use for the large tablecloth that we wrap around our shoulders once we've taken monk's robes, vows, which I haven't yet, but I will be soon. So the merit of the Kasāya, or the Kesa, is about the Buddhist robe. Kesa represents the Sanskrit word, I'll ask the Japanese person today, it's Kesa, not Kesa. So I'm sorry if I keep getting it wrong. Kesa represents the Sanskrit word Kasāya, or Buddhist robe, and kudoku means virtue or merit. So Kesa kudoku means the merit of the Kasāya. Being a realistic religion, Buddhism reveres our real life. In other words, Buddhism esteems our real conduct in daily life. Wearing clothes and eating meals are very important parts of Buddhist life. In particular, the Kasāya and Patra, or Buddhist bowl, are the main symbols of Buddhist life. In this chapter, Master Dōgen explains and praises the merit of the Kasāya. Kasāya? I'm going to call it a Kesa, okay? I know that in this particular translation, Nishijima has written Kasāya, but I'm just going to say Kesa. Okay. The authentic transmission into China of the robe and the Dharma, which are authentically transmitted from Buddha to Buddha and from patriarch to patriarch, was done only by the founding patriarch of Sugaku Peak. The founding patriarch was the 28th patriarch after Shakyamuni Buddha, the transmission having passed 28 times in India from rightful successor to rightful successor. The 28th patriarch went to China in person and became the first patriarch there. The transmission then passed through 5 Chinese masters and reached Sokei, the 33rd patriarch, whom we call the 6th patriarch. Zen master Daikan, the 33rd patriarch, received the authentic transmission of this robe and Dharma on Obaizan mountain in the middle of the night, after which he guarded and retained the robe throughout his life. It is still deposited at Horinji Temple on Sokeizan mountain. Many successive generations of emperors devoutly asked for the robe to be brought to the imperial court, where they served offerings and made prostrations to it, guarding it as a sacred object. The Tang dynasty emperors, Chuso, Shukoso, and Daiso, frequently had the robe brought to the court and served offerings to it. When they requested it and when they sent it back, they would conscientiously dispatch an imperial emissary and issue an edict. The Emperor Daisho once returned the Buddha robe to Sokeizan mountain with the following edict: I now dispatch the great General Ryu Sokei, pacifier of the nation, to receive with courtesy and to deliver the robe. I consider it to be a national treasure. Venerable priests, deposit it according to the Dharma in its original temple. Let it be solemnly guarded only by monks who have intimately received the fundamental teaching. Never let it fall into neglect. Truly, better than ruling a 3,000 great thousandfold realm of worlds, as countless as the sands of the Ganges, to see and to hear and to serve offerings to the Buddha's robe as the king of a small country where the Buddha's robe is present, may be the best life among all good lives lived in life and death. I'm just going to read that sentence again. Truly, better than ruling a 3,000 great thousandfold realm of worlds, as countless as the sands of the Ganges, to see and to hear and to serve offerings to the Buddha's robe as the king of a small country where the Buddha's robe is present, may be the best life among all good lives lived in life and death. Where in the 3,000-fold world, where in a 3,000-fold world which has been reached by the Buddha's influence could the Kesa not exist? At the same time, the one who passed on the authentic transmission of the Buddha's Kesa, having received the face-to-face transmission from rightful successor to rightful successor, is only the ancestral patriarch of Sugaku Peak. The Buddha's Kesa was not handed down through side lineages. The transmission to Bodhisattva Bradrapala, a collateral descendant of the 27th patriarch, duly arrived at Dharma teacher Jo, but there was no authentic transmission of the Buddha's Kesa. Again, the great master Dōshin, the fourth patriarch in China, delivered Zen master Hoyu of Gozu-san Mountain, but did not pass on the authentic transmission of the Buddha's Kesa. So even without the transmission from rightful successors, the Tathagata's right Dharma, whose merit is never empty, confers its wide and great benefit all through thousands of ages and myriads of ages. At the same time, those who have received the transmission from rightful successors are not to be compared with those who lack the transmission. Therefore, when human beings and gods receive and retain the Kesa, they should receive the authentic transmission transmitted between Buddhist patriarchs. In India and in China, in the ages of the right Dharma and the imitative Dharma, even lay people received and retained the Kesa. In this distant and remote land, in the present degenerate age, those who shave their beard and hair and call themselves the Buddha's disciples do not receive and retain the Kesa. They have never believed, known, or clarified that which they should receive and retain, the Kesa. It is lamentable. How much less do they know of the Kesa's material, colour, and measurements? How much less do they know how to wear it? The Kesa has been called, since ancient time, the clothing of liberation. It can liberate us from all hindrances, such as karmic hindrances, hindrances of affliction, and hindrances of retribution. If a dragon gets a single strand of the Kesa, it escapes the three kinds of heat. If a bull touches a Kesa with one of its horns, its sins will naturally be extinguished. When Buddhas realize the truth, they are always wearing the Kesa. Remember, to wear the Kesa is the noblest and highest virtue. Truly, we have been born in a remote land in the age of the latter Dharma, and we must regret this. But at the same time, how should we measure the joy of meeting the robe and the Dharma which have been transmitted from Buddha to Buddha, from rightful successor to rightful successor? Which other lineage has authentically transmitted both the robe and the Dharma of Shakyamuni in the manner of the authentic transmission? Having met them, who could fail to venerate them and to serve offerings to them? Even if, each day, we have to discard bodies and live as countless as the sands of the Ganges, we should serve offerings to them. Indeed, we should vow to meet them, humbly to receive them upon the head, to serve offerings to them, and to venerate them in every life, in every age. Between us and the country of the Buddha's birth, there are more than 100,000 miles of mountains and oceans, and it is too far for us to travel. Nevertheless, promoted by past good conduct, we have not been shut out by the mountains and oceans, and we have not been spurned as the dullards of a remote land. Having met this right Dharma, we should persistently practice it day and night. Having received and retained this Kesa, we should perpetually receive it upon the head in humility and preserve it. How could this only be to have practiced? How could this only be to have practiced merit under one Buddha or two Buddhas? It may be to have practiced all kinds of merit under Buddhas equal to the sands of the Ganges. Even if the people who receive and retain the Kesa are ourselves, we should venerate them, and we should rejoice. We should heartily repay the profound benevolence of the ancestral master in transmitting the Dharma. Even animals repay kindness, so how could human beings fail to recognize kindness? If we failed to recognize kindness, we might be more stupid than animals. The merits of this Buddha robe and this Buddha Dharma were never clarified or known by anyone other than the ancestral master who transmitted the Buddha's right Dharma. If we want to follow gladly the traces of the Buddhas, we should just be glad about this transmission. Even after 100,000 myriads of generations, we should esteem this authentic transmission as the authentic transmission. This transmission may be the Buddha Dharma itself. The proof in due course will become evident. We should not liken the transmission to the dilution of milk with water. It is like a crown prince succeeding to the throne. When we want to use milk, if there is no milk other than this diluted milk described above, although it is diluted milk, we should use it. Even when we do not dilute it with water, we must not use oil, we must not use lacquer, and we must not use wine. The authentic transmission may also be like that. Even a mediocre follower of an ordinary master, providing the authentic transmission is present, may be in a good situation to use milk. But, more to the point, the authentic transmission from Buddha to Buddha and from patriarch to patriarch is like the succession of a crown prince. Even secular teaching says one does not wear clothing different from the official uniform of the previous reign. How could disciples of the Buddha wear robes different from the Buddha's robe? Since the 10th year of the Eihei era, during the reign of the Emperor Komei of the later Han dynasty, monks and laymen going back and forth between the western heavens and the eastern lands have followed on each other's heels without cease. But none has claimed to have met in the western heavens an ancestral master of the authentic transmission from Buddha to Buddha and from patriarch to patriarch. None has a record of the lineage of the face-to-face transmission from the Tathagata. They have only followed teachers of sutras and commentaries and brought back Sanskrit books of sutras and philosophy. None speaks of having met an ancestral master who is a rightful successor to the Buddha's Dharma, and none mentions that there are ancestral masters who have received the transmission of the Buddha's Kesa. Clearly, they have not entered beyond the threshold of the Buddha's Dharma. People like this have not clarified the principle of the authentic transmission of Buddha's patriarchs. When Shakyamuni Tathagata passed to Maya Kasāya the right Dharma eye treasury and the supreme state of Bodhi, he transmitted them together with a Kesa received in the authentic transmission from Kasāya Buddha. Received by rightful successor from rightful successor, the Kesa reached Zen Master Daikan of Sokei Zen Mountain, the 33rd generation. The material, colour, and measurements of the Kesa have been transmitted intimately. Since then, the Dharma descendants of Seigen and Nangaku have intimately transmitted the Dharma, wearing the Dharma of the ancestral patriarchs and keeping the Dharma of the ancestral patriarchs in order. The method of washing the Kesa and the method of receiving and retaining the Kesa cannot be known without learning and practice in the inner sanctum of the legitimate face-to-face transmission of these methods. The Kesa is said to include 3 robes. They are the 5-stripe robe, the 7-stripe robe, and the large robe of 9 or more stripes. Excellent practitioners receive only these 3 robes and do not keep other robes. To use just the 3 robes serves the body well enough. When we are attending to the business of doing chores and when we are going to and from the toilet, we wear the 5-stripe robe. For doing good practices among the Sangha, we wear the 7-stripe robe. To teach human beings and gods and to make them devout, we should wear the large robe of 9 or more stripes. Or when we are in a private place, we wear the 5-stripe robe. When we go among the Sangha, we wear the 7-stripe robe. And when we go into a royal palace or into towns and villages, we should wear the large robe. Or when it is nice and warm, we wear the 5-stripe robe. When it is cold, we put on the 7-stripe robe as well. And when the cold is severe, we also put on the large robe. Once, in ancient times, the weather on a midwinter night was cold enough to split bamboo. As the night fell, the Tathagata put on the 5-stripe robe. As the night passed and it got colder, he put on the 7-stripe robe as well. Later on in the night, when the coldness reached a peak, he also put on the large robe. At this time the Buddha thought, in future ages, when the cold is beyond endurance, good sons should be able to clothe their bodies adequately with these 3 robes. The method of wearing the Kesa. To bear only the right shoulder is the usual method. This is the method of wearing the Kesa so that it goes over both shoulders, a form followed by the Tathagata and veterans who are senior in years and experience. Both shoulders are covered, while the chest may be either exposed or covered. The method of covering both shoulders is for a large Kesa of 60 or more stripes. Usually, when we wear the Kesa, we wear both sides over the left arm and shoulder. The front edge goes over the left side of the Kesa and hangs over the left upper arm. In the case of the large Kesa, this front edge passes over the left shoulder and hangs down behind the back. There are various methods of wearing the Kesa besides this. We should take time to research them and should inquire into them. More on that tomorrow. Thank you for listening.